Salutations, everypup, and welcome to Chapter 29 of The One They Call Broccoli by Texiliaz. As always, the link to the fic will be in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's jump on into it. Chapter 29, Home Intruder. Summary. Broccoli returns from his internship, only to find someone else has taken his place. Has his dad really replaced him with his classmate? Or is it the trauma talking? Author's notes. Hello, everyone! Thank you all for the lovely comments and for the patience. Life is really stressful right now, but it makes me really happy that so many people are still enjoying this story, even when chapters might take a while. And also, a big thank you to Mercy for being such a wonderful beta reader and helping me with this chapter and story. Trigger warning. Panic attacks, reference to child abuse, unintentional child neglect. Look, they might not know he is a human child, but he is, so the whole situation is pretty messed up when you think about it. Broccoli's point of view. Broccoli found himself frozen in the doorway of the kitchen, unable to breathe as panic settled in his very bones. He didn't even notice when the vestiges started drawing closer to the front of his mind, feelings of confusion radiating off of them. Izu, what's wrong, kiddo? Nana asked, only to cut herself off as she noticed the sheer amount of grief and dread that was pouring from the youngest one-for-all user. Nana watched as the kitten slowly backed out of the kitchen, shaking like a leaf, with his fur standing on edge. She followed his terrified gaze, confused as to what could have upset him so much, only to grimace when she saw Toshi, Shota, and Shinso together. It didn't really take a genius to figure out why the kid was upset. Oh no. Izu, Broccoli, it's fine. They love you, alright, kiddo? Please, just don't leave, she pleaded, trying to calm the kid down from what she knew was going to be a really bad panic attack, but to no avail. The other vestiges were drawing closer to the front as well, having sensed that something was wrong when Nana didn't return after having gone out to investigate. By now, the kid's panic was so strong that it was starting to affect them too, and Nana feared that he might run away if they didn't manage to calm him down. But no matter what they said or did, Broccoli could barely hear them over the static in his ears, and didn't even glance their way. No, instead, his eyes were laser-focused on watching that intruder making dinner with his dads inside his home. Toshi was talking animatedly about something, a bright and carefree smile on his face. Beside him, Shota and Shinso were nodding along. His usually tired-looking dad was even smiling, and Broccoli felt so very out of place. A small piece of his traitorous mind was hissing at him, filling him with poisonous thoughts and fueling his fear. That could have been you. That could be you if you weren't such a useless coward. His thoughts came to an abrupt stop when, from seemingly nowhere, Slushy tackled him from behind, causing him to let out a surprised yelp as they both stumbled into the kitchen and landed in a tangling heap of limbs in the middle of the room. Immediately, all noise died down and 3 shocked sets of eyes turned to look at him. All the while, Broccoli was struggling to pull himself out from under Slushy's iron grip of insistent grooming and cuddles. Toshinori was the first to react and let go of what he was doing in order to crouch down next to the 2 cats on the floor. Broccoli? The man gasped, his knees hitting the floor with a painful-sounding thud from how quickly he rushed to their sides. His hands were hovering in front of him, as if he were unsure what to do. With a growl, Broccoli finally managed to push Slushy away, his tail thrashing violently behind him as he took several steps away from both her and the humans that were all staring at him. Even though all he really wanted to do right now was to tackle his sister in a hug, Broccoli knew he couldn't stay. He wasn't needed here. Wasn't wanted. They had someone else now. He needed to leave. As if reading his thoughts, Shota suddenly grabbed him, and the next thing he knew, he was lifted up into the air and held in a rather tight and almost suffocating hug. You are such a goddamn problem, cat. Where the hell have you been? Shota all but growled, the sound of his voice rumbling through his chest and causing Broccoli to involuntarily lean into the feeling. He caught himself starting to relax, and shook himself out of it before struggling even more desperately to get away, only for Shota to hold on even tighter. It wasn't painful in any way, but still a lot firmer hold than his dad would normally use. With a huff, Broccoli looked up and got ready to growl at the man, maybe even bite him just so he would let him go, only for the growl to die in his throat when he met Shota's eyes. The man was glaring harshly, like Broccoli had expected, but his eyes were also filled with worry and tears? His dad never cried! In his shock, Broccoli had completely stopped struggling and was just staring up at Shota in confusion, letting the man look him over and feel him up for any injuries. Not that there were any. All Azuka's injuries had been healed at the hospital. Toshinari stepped closer behind them, a trembling hand hovering just above Broccoli's head but not really touching. Oh, thank God, you're back. I knew you like your freedom, little one, but you can't disappear for so long without at least letting us know you're okay. It's almost been a week, and no one knew where you were. Those words hit like a physical knife to his chest, and Broccoli was suddenly very relieved that cats couldn't cry, or else he would surely be bawling his eyes out right now. They'd been that worried? Shame, guilt, and fear started filling him, and he ducked his head and gave a sharp nod, his claws digging into Shota's shirt while he hid his face against his chest. Again, the all-familiar urge to run washed over him. I need to leave. I need to... But he didn't want to leave. Broccoli wanted to stay with his family. At that thought, he started trembling even harder, bile rising up in his throat as he remembered how damn close the fight with Stain had been. He could have died. He almost did die. And then he would have never gone home again. His dads would never have learned the truth, would have kept waiting and waiting, wondering why he never came home. Hey now, it's okay, little guy. We're not mad. We're glad you're home, Shota said gently, brushing through his unruly fur with shaky fingers. But those words just made everything so much worse, and Broccoli shook his head again and trembled more violently, finding it hard to breathe as everything around him turned dark. Shota's point of view. Shota watched helplessly as the small kitten fell deep into what looked to be a really bad panic attack. It was far from the first panic attack they had seen the little guy have, but that didn't make it any easier. He always felt so useless when this happened, and had no idea what to do other than cradle the little hurt kitten close and hope he knew he was safe. A hand settled on his shoulder, and he turned his gaze away from the trembling cat and over to his partner, who was watching them with anxious eyes. Beside them, he could see Shinso watching them, looking confused and worried as his eyes kept glancing down at the green cat in Shota's arms. Toshi squeezed his shoulder gently and gave him a shaky but encouraging smile. It's all right. Go and make sure he's okay. We'll keep preparing dinner. Immediately, Shota's shoulders slumped with relief, and he gave Toshi a tired smile. Thank you, he breathed out, before hurrying out of the kitchen, Slushy following closely behind him, while Broccoli trembled in Shota's arms and clung to his shirt like it was his only lifeline, which, considering how deeply he seemed to have fallen into an attack, it probably was. There was an odd breeze washing through him as he stepped through the threshold of the kitchen and living room, and he shuddered at the sheer cold but did his best to ignore it. Their apartment had always had cold spots like that, though they'd definitely gotten more frequent these last months. With a shake of his head, Shota pushed away those thoughts and instead turned his focus back to Broccoli. He sat down on the couch and kept talking softly to the kitten, and though he was unsure the little guy could even hear him, Slushy jumped up and settled on his lap, her eyes locked firmly on the younger cat. She was letting out low purrs and confused meows while occasionally bumping her head against Broccoli's own, only to look sad when he didn't even react. It absolutely broke Shota's heart seeing them like this. Eventually, After a painfully long amount of time, he felt the trembling subside, and after even longer, sharp claws drew back, leaving small tears in Shota's shirt that he couldn't even bother to care about. All he could focus on was the fact that Broccoli had finally calmed down. The little guy had eventually managed to fall asleep, having exhausted himself from that panic attack, no doubt. Shuttle let out a sigh of relief and carefully settled the kitten on the couch. As soon as he backed away, Slushy wasted no time in walking up to the sleeping kitten and curled around him protectively, wrapping her whole body and tail around him while letting out what had to be a bone-numbing purr. He smiled at the adorable sight and took a few quick photos before walking back into the kitchen. Dinner was apparently finished some time ago, and Shinso and Toshi were in the middle of eating when he got back to join them. "Sorry about that," he said to Shinso, sitting down next to his husband with the kid across from them. "That's okay," Shinso answered, before giving a small frown and glancing over at the living room. "So, that was broccoli?" "Yep," Shota answered with a sigh, accepting a bowl of katsudon from his husband with a grateful smile. "Is he okay?" Shinso asked, still glancing between Shota and the door while moving some food around on his plate almost nervously. "Wouldn't we want to know?" Shota grumbled before getting elbowed by Toshi and shaking his head. "He'll be fine, kid. It was just a panic attack, and now he's sleeping. We told you about his quirk, right?" "Intelligence quirk," Shinso answered with a nod, before frowning down at the table. "I guess I was just surprised. Never seen a cat so anxious before." "He's usually not like that. Hopefully, you won't have to witness any more of them." Toshi jumped in, giving the kid a small smile. "Right," Shinso said, moving to take a bite of his food, when he suddenly flinched and turned around, looking over his shoulder and eyes scanning the room as if searching for something. "Is something the matter?" Toshi asked. Shinso frowned before he turned back around and slowly shook his head. He was looking a little pale as he rubbed a hand against the back of his neck. "No, it's nothing. Just thought I felt something." Broccoli's point of view. Broccoli woke up to the loud sound of purring and someone brushing the fur on top of his head. He sleepily leaned into the feeling, giving a low and content purr back. He could hear people moving around and voices talking around him. Curiously, he blinked his eyes open, only to come face to face with a big ball of white, fluffy fur. Huffing, Broccoli turned around, realizing that Slushy was cuddling him. His sister gave an unhappy growl when he moved, but let him get up to stretch. "Are you okay?" Broccoli jumped at the voice and turned around to see Hikage sitting at the floor next to the couch, watching him warily. The man looked on edge, like he was worried about something, though why he would be that, Broccoli wasn't sure. Just as Broccoli was about to answer, he suddenly remembered what had happened before he had fell asleep. He had been gone for his internships, had gone home, seen his dad's and Shinso, and then, with a growl, Broccoli laid his head against the couch cushion and buried his face beneath his paws. Beside him, Slushy was nosing him curiously, wondering what he was doing. "Great! Not even 5 minutes home and you managed to freak out your dads and have a panic attack. Good job!" Broccoli grumbled to himself, only to flinch when someone pulled on one of his ears. "Ouch! What was that for?" Broccoli hissed, shooting up and glaring at Takage, who was glaring right back. "We can practically feel the self-hate coming from you right now. Stop feeling bad for something you can't control," Hikage scolded sternly. Before Broccoli could even think about giving a reply, Slushy meowed next to them and suddenly leaped off the couch and ran out of the room. Broccoli and Akage glanced at each other before curiosity took over and Broccoli rushed after his sister down the hall. It seemed like Shota and Shinso were just about to head out for patrol and were putting on the last of their gear. Slushy, the cuddly traitor, was currently circling around Shinso and purring like an engine while the teen petted her with a fond smile. The scene had Broccoli grimace, and he let out a low growl without even thinking, gaining the attention of the two humans by the door. Oh, you're awake, Shota said, blinking down at Broccoli in surprise. Broccoli didn't acknowledge him, instead standing firmly with his back arched and glaring at Shinso, who was still trespassing in his home and petting his sister. Shota looked between them, before sighing deeply, and sat down on the floor, gesturing for Shinso to do the same. The teen looked a little confused, but did as he was told, sitting stiffly next to his teacher and looking at Broccoli with curious eyes. Broccoli, this is Shinso, one of my students. You saw him during the sports festival, remember? He's been living here this week for his internship and will stay another 2 nights. So please try to get along, Shota said, giving Broccoli a pointed look. Shinso seemed to grow more and more uncomfortable the longer the man talked, and by the end of it, he was looking between Shota and the cat weirdly, like he was suddenly reminded this was a quirked cat and was now unsure on what to do. Yeah, hi. Nice to meet you, Broccoli, Shinso said awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck and giving him a tight-lipped and nervous smile. The tense posture, the uncomfortable smile, and strained voice. It reminded Broccoli a lot of the first time he met Shota, how his awareness had seemed to creep the man out. That was the reason he had decided to hide it in the first place, and seeing it all over again was seriously just bringing bad memories and a sour taste to his mouth. He glanced over at his dad, who was petting Slushy absent-mindedly, while watching Broccoli for any reaction. No sign of discomfort whatsoever. Instead, he just looked morbidly curious, and maybe a tiny bit worried about the risk of his student being bitten. Not that Broccoli would do that. No, that would be gross. Well, maybe if he got too close. But he wouldn't just bite someone out of nowhere. The only people he had bitten had deserved it. No matter what Zashi might say, the man had it coming. Broccoli looked the other teen over and, deciding that Shinso was safe for now, he walked closer so he could give his dad's hand a small headbutt of good luck. The man chuckled a little and scratched him behind the ear, earning him a loud purr in return. Broccoli then leaned back and turned his gaze back over to Shinso, who looked like he was holding his breath as he stared at the cat with conflicted but almost hopeful eyes. He knew from past conversations with his classmate that Shinso was a huge cat lover. It made sense he would like to pet a small fluffy cat, even if the thought of it having a quirk weirded him out. But he could throw that chance out the window because, quite frankly, Broccoli found himself wanting nothing to do with this guy. Sure, Izuku liked his friend, and maybe Broccoli would have felt differently had they met under different circumstances like he met Todoroki and Ida, but seeing Shinso like this, as a giant intruder in his home, stealing his family? No, Broccoli did not like the teen. With a huff, Broccoli turned around and walked away, ignoring the crestfallen look on Shinso's face. Huh, well, that went honestly better than expected, Shota said, sounding almost amused. No, come on, kid. Time to head out. Shinso and Shota left soon after that, leaving Broccoli alone with Toshi and Slushy. The blonde had not wanted to leave Broccoli out of his sight ever since the others left. It was as if he was scared the cat would just disappear in a flash the moment he looked away. Not that Broccoli was complaining, though. The cuddles and extra snacks were nice. Broccoli tried to just enjoy the time he could spend with Toshi, but he couldn't help feeling anxious and stressed. After all, he really needed to charge his phone, and in order to do that, he needed his dad to go to sleep. Thankfully, it only took an hour or so before Toshi headed to bed, taking both the cats with him but leaving the door open in case they wanted to leave. As soon as he was sure that his dad was asleep, Broccoli bolted out of the bedroom and over to the office, with Slushy right at his heels. Once they were inside the small office, Izuku turned into a human and made sure to close the door completely behind him, keeping him out of sight in case anyone should walk into the apartment. All right, Izuku sighed under his breath as he fished out his phone from his pocket. It was always a lot more tricky plugging in the phone than it was unplugging it. But after doing this for a few years, he was starting to get the hang of it. He kneeled next to the cabinet and reached under it with his hand. His arm was scraping uncomfortably against the metal, but he grit through the pain in order to find the cable. He'd seriously have to find another hiding place soon, since his arm had started bulking out from all the training. Broccoli might be able to unplug it, but to plug it in, he needed his thumbs. Slushy was circling his kneeling form and purring loudly, doing a very good job of distracting him and making this 10 times harder than it had to be. But Izuku did his best to ignore her as he continued to blindly search for the cable. Come on, where is it? He grumbled and when he couldn't find it. His back was starting to hurt, so he sat up to take a break and glared at the gap under the cabinet. With a sigh, Izuku transformed back into Broccoli, and Slushy chirped happily when she saw his cat form, immediately tackling him and trying to cuddle him. Broccoli, as much as he would love to return the affection, was on a very important mission. And so, he did his best avoiding his sister's affection and crawled beneath the cabinet to look for that damn cable. Only, it wasn't there? Broccoli's stomach sank as he looked around the dark and suspiciously clean space beneath the cabinet. Don't tell me. They cleaned? But then... Oh, no. No, no, no. Then did they see the charger? Where is it now? Doe? Kiddo. At the sound of Nana calling out for him, Broccoli jumped so high he accidentally banged his head in the metal bar above him. Oh, shit. Are you okay down there? With a whine, Broccoli rubbed a paw over his head and glanced back to see Nana kneeling down and looking down beneath the cabinet. Slushy seated by her side and giving them both curious looks. It's not here, Broccoli answered sadly, as he gave the space another pitiful look. They must have found my charger and thrown it out. It's gone, Nana. He crawled out from beneath the cabinets and shook his fur, a small amount of dust flying off of him despite the most likely recent cleaning. Nana hummed, a thoughtful frown on her face. Before she could answer, though, Yoichi spoke up inside of their mind. If it's any consolation, they probably didn't throw it away. At least, not if Toshi was the one who found it. That man is way too sentimental to throw stuff away. Oh, yeah, Nana agreed with a smile. Toshi is awful at throwing stuff out. He'd probably keep it for months just to be on the safe side. You know, just in case it was for something important. At that, Broccoli perked up, feeling the smallest bit of hope that it wasn't gone forever. Okay, so, where is it? He asked, looking up at Nana hopefully. There was a moment where the vestiges murmured to each other, the voices echoing around his head. Well, there are a few places I can think of, Nana started, only to trail off by a sudden and loud meow beside them. They turned to look at Sushi, who was standing on her hind legs and pawing at one of the desk drawers. But I think I have a pretty good guess, Nana continued with a giggle. Broccoli immediately turned back into a human, and Izuku rushed over to open the door. And there, at the very top, laid his phone charger. He felt a giant grin spread across his face at the sight of it, and he picked Slushy up to hug her against his chest and give her a big kiss on her fluffy little head. You're the best, Slushy, he whispered against her fur, getting a happy meow and a loud purr in response. Still smiling, Izuku put down Slushy and picked up the charger. Now, where do I... He suddenly trailed off, danger sense hitting him in the head like a truck. Without thinking, he turned back into Broccoli, phone charger and all. And it was a really good thing that he did, because not even a moment later, the door to the office opened, and they all stared wide-eyed at a tired-looking Toshi. The man looked tense as he was scanning the dark room with sleepy yet suspicious eyes. Slushy was the first to react, meowing happily and stalking over to Toshi, who jumped in surprise once he noticed her. What? I thought the door was closed. How did you get in here? Toshi mumbled quietly, while he picked up Slushy before his eyes traveled over to Broccoli. Were you two the one making all that noise? I was a bit worried there was an intruder or something. He chided the cats gently, beckoning Broccoli to get closer. But Broccoli, who was still trying to calm his rapid heartbeat, didn't dare move. He was completely frozen as a mantra of, "That was too close," rang inside his mind. Toshi gave him a worried look and kneeled next to him. Are you okay, little one? I'm sorry if I scared you. Now come on, let's head back to bed, alright? Toshi said gently, before lifting Broccoli up too. It was only once Toshi turned around and headed back towards the door that he noticed the now open drawer. Broccoli swallowed nervously and watched his dad stare at the drawer, his brows furrowed deeply in thought. Then, after a moment of staring in silence, he closed it with a shake of his head and walked back to their bedroom. Toshi hesitated for another small moment before he closed the bedroom door behind them and laid back down, now with Slushy and Broccoli curled up by his side. Laying like this, it was hard staying awake, and Broccoli found himself quickly drifting off to sleep. It was only just before falling asleep that he remembered. He still hadn't managed to charge his phone. The next morning, Broccoli was woken up by Toshi getting up to make breakfast, and Slushy practically stepping all over him in order to catch up with their dad. At some point during the night, Shota had returned from patrol and was now sleeping at the very edge of the bed so as to not disturb the two tiny cats that had been occupying the middle of it. Broccoli smiled at the sight of his silly dad and jumped down from the bed to follow Toshi and Slushy out to the kitchen. His dad had already filled their bowls, and Slushy was happily eating her portion. And for one shameful moment, Broccoli's nose wrinkled at the sight of the cat food. He had honestly kind of gotten used to only eating human food while he was away that he forgot about this part of life. Feeling eyes on him, he glanced up to see Toshi watching him with concerned eyes, and not wanting to worry his dad, he went to eat. He knew he was being silly. After all, it didn't taste bad at all while he was in his cat form. It was more the concept of it. But he'd been eating this stuff for years now, and it never bothered him before. So why now? Why would it suddenly matter that he was eating off the floor instead of by the table with his dad's? It didn't take long for Toshi to finish making breakfast, and he was soon calling Shota and Shinso to come eat. At the mention of Shinso, Broccoli had to bite back a growl, and he hid it by taking another mouthful of food. The purple-haired teen soon walked into the kitchen, still wearing pajamas and his hair looking even wilder than usual while he rubbed sleep out of his eyes. Good morning, young Shinso, Toshi greeted with a smile. I hope you managed to sleep well? Shinso yawned and sat down at the table, looking more asleep than awake. It was all right, he answered quietly. His eyes then traveled over to Slushy and Broccoli, who were both watching him. As soon as their eyes met, Shinso gave him a sort of awkward smile. Morning, Slushy and Broccoli, he said with a small wave. Broccoli glared at him, and this time he couldn't hold back the low growl he let out. I see that Broccoli is friendly as ever, Shota grumbled from where he just walked in. As soon as he saw his dad, Broccoli immediately perked up, and he walked up to stroke his head affectionately against the man's leg. Shota smiled softly and gave both him and Slushy a pet on the head. But then, way too soon, he stepped back and went to sit by the table across from Shinso and next to Toshi. Something ugly twisted inside of him at the sight, but he ignored it for now and went back to back to defending his food from his still hungry sister. He listened as the three humans ate breakfast together, talking about what they would do during the day. Shota and Shinso were going out to train later, which Broccoli made a mental note that he probably also should do that. Just because his internship got cancelled didn't mean he would get to slack off. By the way, did any of you take the cable from the office yesterday? Broccoli tensed, and he shot Toshi a panicked look before catching himself and looking away. He briefly glanced back over at the other two to see how they would react. Shinso just gave a confused shake of his head, and Shota raised an eyebrow at the odd question. No, I didn't. Why? Oh, well, it's just that I went in there last night and the drawer was left open. I thought I might have imagined it at first, so I went back there this morning and, well, when I looked, a cable I was sure I left there had gone missing. Is it the same one that mysteriously appeared? Shota asked. Broccoli did his best not to choke on his food. Ah, yes, it is quite strange. Maybe it's ghosts playing pranks on you. Both of his dads whipped their heads to look at Shinso, who just gave them a shrug. When neither of them answered, he rubbed the back of his neck and continued more sheepishly. I mean, we already know that ghosts exist, considering Midoriya, so I just. Yeah, sorry, that was probably dumb. No, that is okay, Toshi reassured him. I just wasn't expecting that. Well, it's either that or someone who is living in your walls, Shinso added with another shrug. Apparently that happens. Families that have some complete stranger living in their walls without them knowing. Toshi paled, but Shota just rolled his eyes with a huff. I highly doubt anyone would manage something like that. I'd know if someone else was living there. Oh, the irony. And had you suggested the ghosts a few months ago, I might have called it illogical. But I guess we can't rule it out considering a certain problem child. Shota continued with a sigh and a shake of his head. The conversations, thankfully, moved away from missing cables and ghosts from there. Him and Slushy ended up finishing their food before the others, and, with nothing else to distract him with, Broccoli found himself sitting on the floor and simply watching the humans. Seeing them like this, together, it really didn't sit right. The teen was too close. He was way too close. With an annoyed twitch of his tail, Broccoli walked closer, until he was just at the edge of the table. Then he leaped up, landing directly on Shota's lap. The man startled mid-sentence, looking down at Broccoli in mild surprise that soon turned into amused fondness. Well, this was a surprise. He chuckled while scratching Broccoli behind his ear. I know it's been a while, kitten, but you know you're not allowed at the table. Should have then reached down to presumably lift him back to the floor, but before he could, Broccoli leaped further up and climbed up onto his dad's shoulder until he was comfortably half hidden beneath the man's hair. Beside them, Toshi started laughing, and all Shota did was give him an unimpressed look. Broccoli peeked up at him and meowed, which was predictably the final straw before the man cracked. Fine, but only for today, Shota sighed, giving him another pet on the head. Broccoli purred at the attention and curled up as close to Shota as he could. His eyes then met Shinso's, who was watching him curiously. Broccoli squinted his eyes at him and gave a threatening growl, startling all of them. Hey now, none of that, Shota chided, giving him a stern look. Shinso is my student. He has every right to be here. Got that? Broccoli let out another unhappy growl, glaring daggers at Shinso, who was now looking everywhere but Broccoli. Good! He shouldn't look at Shota or Toshi. Shouldn't be in our home. Shouldn't sit at our table when not even I am allowed here. There was a finger lightly flicking his nose, and Broccoli let out a surprised yelp before turning wide eyes to Shota, who was glaring at him. Got that? He repeated, even more sternly this time. If not, then you can get down. That finally had Broccoli stop growling, and he reluctantly laid down with a huff. Breakfast continued like before, only now with Broccoli hanging out on Shota's shoulder, while the man was absent-mindedly petting him sometimes. Sometimes he would even get some food from Toshi. He loved his dad so much. Shinso kept trying to get his attention, though, which was annoying. He kept asking stuff about him, like where they found him, how old he was, when they discovered his quirk, and so on and so on. It was so annoying! But Broccoli kept quiet through all of it, only setting the teen harsh glares whenever Shota wasn't looking. After breakfast, Broccoli could feel the strain from overusing his quirk, and he knew he would need to head out soon. With not many places to go, he decided to head over to UA so he could train. That way, he could also charge his phone in the locker room while he was off training in one of the gyms. It was a win-win. Training went well, if not a bit lonely, which is a weird thing to think about considering the 7 ghosts hanging out in his head that gave live commentary on his training and even corrected his stance. But it wasn't like he could actually spar with any of them. Not like he could with Shota or Gran Torino or his classmates. So, yeah, it was a little bit lonely. Thankfully, school would start in 2 days, so it wasn't like he would be without a sparring partner for long. He returned home, ready to relax and cuddle with Slushy and their dads, only to growl unhappily when he noticed only Slushy and one other person were home. And of course, it had to be Shinso. Author's notes. Izuku. Welcome to my class, Shinso. I hope we can be friends. Broccoli. Get out of my house, you horrible intruder, or I will scratch your eyes out. Poor Shinso. It's not easy when one of your friend's alters doesn't like you, especially when they are so cute and all you want is to cuddle them. But who knows? Maybe Broccoli might warm up to him eventually? What do you think? Will Shinso be able to befriend our feral little broccoli boy, or is he doomed to get bitten trying? Shinso is seriously such a fun character to write, and I love him so much. Really looking forward to share future chapters with you, all of our purple-haired with you all of our purple-haired insomniac and chaotic green floofball. P.S. I'm unsure when the next chapter is gonna get out, but I'm not planning on dropping this fic. It will continue and eventually be finished, even if it might take a while for updates to come out, considering real life stuff and how I am currently in the middle of graduating college and moving cities. Anyway, thank you everyone for your continued patience, comments, and support. Hope you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you are in the world. And that's a wrap on chapter 29. This was a fun one. I love Broccoli hating Shinso so much. It's just so ironically funny to me. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Please go show the original author Texiliaz some love. Please leave me a comment. And seriously, guys, I'm serious. Leave me hate comments. I want to read a hate comment. I want one of you guys to leave me a hate comment so that I can then read it and then heart it and be like, thank you. Because I genuinely asked for them. But I'm weird, so whatever. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I will see you guys next time. Bye bye, pups.